the first thing that I'm asking you is, what are we referring to when it comes to our basic human nature and the perception of power?
Yeah, power is one of those things that it'll be moronic not to speak about it. I know that one of the things that we talked about in our quest is to expand on the positive aspects of our personality, to really highlight that humanity of us all. But it'll be irresponsible not to talk about the nature of how some things are, you know, that we'll talk about polar opposites pretty soon. Well, I don't know if we have already, but we will.
I think we have.
Yeah. And those things are two sides of the same coin. So even though we are in the Source Quest, we want to highlight the positives and overcoming challenges and things like that. I feel that it's necessary to really talk about life as it is experienced between humans from the point of view of right now, but also history. And power has a lot to do with the way that we've been treating each other ever since life came into being. So we need to really talk about that, particularly in the relationship between us humans and our counterparts within society.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. So I have a quote that I'm going to read to kind of dive into this. It's a quote by Nicolo Machiavelli. I'm like, I'm not Italian, but I'm close enough, right? Puerto Rican,
There's something like that.
Okay. Anyway.
Well, Columbus was, never mind. Let's not get into that.
That's a whole nother episode.
But go ahead.
All right. How we live is so different from how we ought to live, that he who studies what ought to be done rather than what is done will learn the way to his downfall rather than to his preservation. And that is, of course, Nicolo Machiavelli, the Prince.
Yeah, and it's one of my favorite books.
Talk to me about that. Yeah,
it's one of my favorite books. And again, there's always the connotation of Machiavelli being something that has to do with evil, right? Even the name gives that impression about.
Well, it's something that's even been, a Tupac rapped about it. Machiavelli, right? And it's it's something that people really. But idolize, so to speak, I guess, and for lack of better terms.
Because he talks about power and the ruthlessness in which us human beings gain power, and
the ways in which we gain power,
the ways in which we gain it. Particularly through brutal means, and maintaining that power by the dance between keeping people happy, but also keeping people in check. So this book in particular, and I like this quote because it emphasizes the fact that what I'm saying is we want to enhance the positives of what it is to be human. But we also have to acknowledge the shadow side.
This goes back to the shadow.
Exactly. The shadow side of what we are capable of. And this is the fallacy that most people think. It's oh, that's not me. It's it is you. If you look deep down enough and you push yourself far enough, you can become that brutal individual. So when I'm thinking of power, I look at power as the ability to be able to guide one's own destiny, be the captain of our own ship, And the way that I learned it is simply to live, to influence others by the way that I live my life.
That's you personally learned it?
How I've learned it. And then ironically enough, and I think I mentioned the story before, is I learned this through my confirmation. And in the confirmation, you receive the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit works within you. But the way that I was taught by Ken was that you receive these gifts, but they're dormant inside of you unless you act upon it, And the greatest action that you could take, and the great manifestation of that power, right, that's dormant within us, is to influence others by the way that we live our lives.
So then therein lies the problem, because then you have that aspect of influencing others, and doing the right thing. But everybody has a different idea what the right thing is, right?
Yes.
So then oftentimes that power sort of bloats our ego. And we exercise power in a way that we end up manipulating other people.
Of course.
And taking advantage of other people.
Yes. I mean, you see this throughout history. You know, it's the idea of...
Well, first, before you do that, can you just tell me, like, how do you define power? What is that?
Power is in basic sense, it's the idea of truly getting what you want, or getting what you perceive you want or need in order to survive. You know, that it's that impulse of consumption, right? That impulse of life. Again, it's a natural impulse to be assertive of power. And if you don't have power, you are not going to be able to survive. You know, and even those who call themselves religions, you know, they're looking for the power of God to work towards them, because that is something in order for them to survive this existence, you need to have some sort of power, the power of autonomy, to not be able to be bound by someone or something, the power to be able to live free, to have a meal, to be able to not be bound by the material world. That's what power is as defined. You could define it technically as the what you need in order to get from one point to another. You need some sort of power to propel you to that level.
So exercising power is a choice.
It is a choice.
And exercising power, do you think it's related to our values and our morals?
It is. The problem lies in the disproportionate use of power.
Okay.
You know? And
so again, the bloated
shadow.
ego.
That's the shadow. If we don't understand the dualities within ourselves and our propensity to subjugate others because to fulfill our needs, history has plenty of examples of that. And it continues to happen. There is abuse of power. And this is not something that is theoretical on just a society at large. It happens on our interactions daily with our partners, with our family members, with our coworkers. There is that dichotomy of power, and you need to be able to understand and navigate those interactions that happen on a regular basis. It's experience. It's something that we experience. The boss-worker relationship, that is a relationship of power, because it is assumed that one has more power over the other. And sometimes, and we've known this to be a fact, that those relationships are abusive. And the idea is not to look at this relationship in the negative, which is what our society does. But being able to both sides understand their propensities to take advantage. Now, that's a tall task to ask of someone.
I agree.
To be able to look at the negative sides of how abusive that power to get. So just to recap, power in and of itself is not a negative thing. It's the disproportionate use of power and the abusive use of power for personal gain at the expense of others. That is something that we've seen in history that is problematic.
Right.
And if we don't check that, it will continue to rear its ugly head.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens all the time.
Cancer, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.